let's begin. It's Teaching Tuesday where the magic's within. Unlock the words, let the stories unfold. In a world of letters, watch the wonders take hold. Come on in, let's learn and grow. Build the future word by word, row by row. Together we'll read, together we'll rise. On Teaching Tuesdays, we'll open our eyes. Every sound, every line brings us closer to turning our learners into super prosers. Phonics and fun, on a journey we'll lead. With every Tuesday, we plant another seed. Come on in, let's learn and grow. Build the future word by word, row by row. Together we'll read, together we'll rise. On Teaching Tuesdays, we'll open our eyes. Step by step, we'll find our way. Through every challenge, come what may. In our group, you're never alone. Together we'll turn this skill into a stone. Come on in, let's learn and grow. Let's learn and grow. Build the future word by word, row by row, row by row. Together we'll read, together we'll read, together we'll rise, together we'll rise. Teaching Tuesdays, the sky's the prize.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Teaching Tuesday. I am Katina Taylor. I'm the founder and CEO of Dreams KC, and tonight we are bringing you episode 55 of Teaching Tuesday. I am so excited that you all take time out each and every week to join us as we give you the tips, the tools, the strategies to empower you to support your children on their literacy journey. So welcome. Thank you so much. You may say, who is Katina? Well, I'll tell you exactly who I am so you'll know. I am a 15-year veteran educator. I have taught in traditional public schools. I have taught in charter schools, which are also public schools, as well as private school classrooms. I've taught middle school, high school, as well as first grade. I've been in the education ecosystem for a period of 25 years. I am a literacy advocate where I have had the opportunity to tutor and support children my entire career and move them along their journey to becoming confident and competent readers. I also have supported parents in the role of advocate in terms of being able to maneuver through, navigate the often confusing labyrinth that is the education space. And so I am so proud and thankful that I have been able to do that. And currently I serve as the founder and CEO of Dreams KC, which is a 501c3 nonprofit social enterprise where we empower parents with the tools they need to teach their children foundational literacy skills. So that's who I am. That's why you should be watching and tuned in to get what you need to support your children in becoming confident and competent readers. So thank you again for joining me. I like to point out, I often say, but I was like, I need to have a visual so that people understand, realize, and recognize that what you get here inside our private Facebook group or on YouTube on Tuesdays is really a snapshot. It's a little bit of what we do at Dreams KC. So I often characterize it as the iceberg principle. What we see above water is about 10 to 15%. But what's beneath the surface, if you were to join us in our parent literacy trainings, you'd get all of what we have to offer. 85% of the iceberg is beneath the surface. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to me, send me an inbox, email me at info at dreamskc.org and learn all about our parent literacy trainings, our decodable book walks, as well as our decodable book literacy hubs. So we offer a lot to support our children, support you all as parents, the first and most important teachers of your children, as you support your children, and of course, becoming again confident and competent readers. All right. So I want to again welcome you all. For those of you that may be tuning in a little bit later, I've already said it, but I'll say it again. My name is Katina Taylor, and tonight we are focusing in on something that every parent wonders about at some point, and that is, does my child really truly understand what they're reading? Comprehension. Not just reading the words, or what I like to say, word calling, but actually making sense of the text, of the stories, of the nonfiction. That are they thinking deeply? Are they connecting with the material? And of course, 2025 has been focused on our adolescent literacy learners. When you think of adolescents, I don't want you to think about teenagers. I want you to think of fourth grade and above. That is what we consider to be adolescent literacy learners in the field of education, right? So I just want to make sure that I point that out. That's who we're talking about. But really and truly, we're talking about any child that is moving along their literacy journey, because the ultimate goal is meaning making, understanding, comprehending the text that they are engaged with, right? So let's get into how you can assess them at home and determine, without stress, worksheets, confusion, if in fact they understand what they read. So let's dive in, you all. So the first question is, what is comprehension? What is comprehension? So it goes above and beyond, right? Decoding. When we hear that word comprehension, we often think of test questions, quizzes, the end of chapter or end of unit reviews, right? But at its core, comprehension, again, is really about making meaning from the text that they are engaged with, that we are engaged with. It's not enough that our children can read the words on a page. That's not enough. We want to know, do they understand it? Can they talk about it? Can they think about it? It is an active process, and it's the foundation of success in every subject area. It's cross-curricular. It impacts math, science, social studies, art, music, health, and PE. All of the subject areas, STEAM, right, that they encounter in school and outside of school. And so we want to ensure that they have worked their way from those early literacy skills to the ultimate mastery or goal, which is meaning making. Okay. So you all have probably seen this, because I used to share it every episode, and I thought, let me get back to this. This is Scarborough's Reading Row, and it tells you all of the strands that get us to comprehension on my far right. Okay. Which is that skilled reading. That's the ultimate goal. So if we're just focused on word recognition, decoding, right, blending, syllables, phonemes, etc., the sight words, we'd only be focused on word recognition. But that's not enough to get us to skilled reading or comprehension or making meaning from the text. We also need the language comprehension piece. So that background knowledge, the vocabulary development, language structure, verbal reasoning, that literacy knowledge, right? So combined, all of these strands combined is what gets us to meaning making or comprehension. So I always like to point that out so people have a really clear picture of what we're talking about when we talk about comprehension, which is the ultimate goal. All of these strands matter. And if any of them are frayed, any of them are missing, and I liken it to, I'm probably dating myself, you guys, but if you think about when we used to jump double dutch at school, and you had those big, thick red ropes that would hurt your legs, woo! I tell you, but if you looked at the edge of those, you would see multiple strands made up that big, thick rope. And it's the same thing with reading. Multiple strands make up word recognition, multiple strands make up language comprehension. And if any of them are frayed or coming apart, we don't get to comprehension or meaning making. A simpler way to think about it is the simple view of reading. I always say it's a simple computation problem, or word senses equation. Word recognition times language comprehension gets us to the meaning making, the reading comprehension, which is the ultimate goal, right? So when we think about our adolescent literacy learners, pre-K or birth to third grade, they're really learning how to read. Now, we have to be honest that many of our children may have some barriers, some obstacles, some challenges in terms of getting there. So, generally speaking, they should have mastered learning how to read birth to third grade. After that, our adolescent literacy learners, fourth grade and above, now they're really focused on reading to learn, right? So, in those other subject matter areas, those cross curricular areas, they're really reading now to really increase add depth and breadth to their knowledge. But if they are not there yet, that's okay. That's where we come in at Dreams. That's where I come in on Teaching Tuesdays, our parent literacy training, because we want to assess where they are so that we can identify their strengths and their challenges. And then we get into how do we address those areas where they need additional support so that we can get them where they need to be. Hope that makes sense, right? All right. So another way I always tell people is think about it in this way. Reading the words is just the start. They still have to construct, right? Some meaning. They have to think about what they've read. They have to make connections and ask questions. All of those things are happening at the same time when we read a text, when we engage with text. And so if we're thinking about comprehension, we're thinking about all of those things happening at once, right? And we're also thinking about assessing those things so we know where their strengths are, what they've already mastered, and then what we can do to move them along that literacy journey so that it is full and complete and they have mastered all of these skills. I hope that makes sense. All right. So let's just keep it moving, keep it moving. So when we think about this, we want to think about 3 different types of comprehension. Now, oftentimes people go, what? It's just comprehension. No, parents, it's not. No, early career educators, it's not. No, educators or literacy coaches or tutors that may not understand or have the depth of knowledge when it comes to structured literacy and the science of reading. We need to be thinking about 3 different types of comprehension. So we want to go deeper than, did they just get it? Did they kind of understand it? No, we want to go deeper than that, right? And so the 3 types of understanding we can look for is literal, right? That's at the bottom of the pyramid. It doesn't matter what order, all right? So literal, facts, dates, names, etc. Can they just regurgitate it back to us, right? That's that basic, what the text says, the historical facts and figures, the dates, when the person lived, when they died, what event happened, all of that. Basic, bottom of the pyramid. Then we want to go into inferential, right? Comprehension. Can they make inferences? Read between the lines of the text. So the text may not spell it out, but can we draw a particular conclusion about what the text means, right? Not all people have that skill. Not all people have that skill. They haven't practiced it. Any skill we have to practice in order to get to mastery, right? Last but certainly not least is that evaluative, right? So we're asking, then what do they think about it? And why? Can they explain it? Can they use evidence from the text to support their opinion or thoughts as they draw a logical conclusion about what they have read, why a character acted a certain way, what might be the cause and effect of a particular historical event, even, right? So those are some of the things that we want to think about. And all 3 of them are important, and we can easily have them practice all of them at home. It's not hard. I promise you it's not. But remember, I always give you all the foundational knowledge. So we start with what is comprehension. We talked about the simplicity of it, understanding that that's the ultimate goal of engaging with a text. Now we're talking about the types of comprehension that we want to assess to ensure that our students, our children have mastered the particular skill sets, right? And then we want to talk about now what makes it work. And if you go back and look at Scarborough's reading rope, right? We know if we look at the top portion of the language comprehension, these are the things that make it work, right? So I'm going to go back, right? Okay, so here we are, another visual. And remember, you all take notes. You can screenshot this. You can come back and look at this video for a period of 30 days since Facebook has changed their algorithm and now they delete videos after the 30 days. But remember, you can also go to @LiteracyIsLiberation on YouTube, and you can find our videos there in perpetuity. And if YouTube tries to change something, I got them in another spot too. So I just want you all to know you can come back to this information, these Teaching Tuesdays, 55 weeks in, y'all, 55 different episodes, and you can engage and see the information if you are driving, you're out and about, you don't have any place to take notes, know that it'll be here for you. So let's keep moving. So what makes comprehension work? What makes it work? Well, this is the part where most parents, they don't see it. They're like, wait, what? Because remember, our brains, the neural pathways we need, they've been developed. We take what our brains are doing in the midst of reading for granted, right? So parents don't get to see this, right? They oftentimes don't even hear it. So there are many pieces that support comprehension. So many of our children struggle not because they're not smart or capable or intellectually able to master reading, but because they may be missing a piece of the puzzle to make it happen. So it could be vocabulary. If they've been talked at or not talked to at all, are talked in baby terms where we're not using sophisticated vocabulary and we haven't taught them, right? That morphology, prefixes, suffixes, word roots, etc., then they may be struggling in the area of vocabulary. So we have to build up their vocabulary. And a couple of episodes back, we talked about assessing vocabulary development and how we can build that. So feel free to go back and take a look at that, right? Sentence structure is another one. How sentences, do they understand what it means? Independent, dependent clauses, a question mark, an exclamation point, semicolons, how we put language together, sentences together, right? How words form meaningful sentences impact understanding. So if that hasn't been taught, we haven't played with it, we haven't moved things around, we haven't broken sentences apart and put them back together and talked about the functioning of the structure of a sentence or the syntax of a sentence, and then therefore paragraphs, therefore, right, a whole chapter of a book, etc., then they may be struggling there. Also, background knowledge. We often talk about background knowledge, but I don't think we do a really good job of talking to parents about how to build their background knowledge. Magazines, podcasts, movies, field trips. That's why they're important. Going to the zoo, going to the museum, going to different places and having different experiences, gardens, the Toy Miniature Museum, Science City, things like that build the background knowledge. The library. Why? Because they are being exposed to things that they may not otherwise be exposed to. Traveling, if you can. It doesn't have to be some, out of the country. It could be you're in Kansas City, go to Columbia, go to Topeka, go to St. Louis, go to Jeff City. They're going to see, hear, and experience things which helps them build their background knowledge. So that's what we mean. That prior information helps readers connect to new content. Here's another thing. Google's our best friend, right? My grandkids, and I have 4, 10, 9, 5, and 6 months. They are always asking me questions. If I can't answer, I don't fake it. I get a book, We get on YouTube, we get on Google. Now we got ChatGPT, we have Perplexity, some of our AI tools. We're looking up that information because I understand the need and necessity to help them build their background knowledge so that they can then connect the text that they're engaging with to something they've already learned about. You can also do text to text connections, text to worlds. What does this remind you about in the world or in your own life? Text to self connections. All of that helps build that background knowledge, which is so extremely important, right? I often also talk to you all about vocabulary in terms of, like, I say, what is the piece of furniture that we have in our living room that we sit on? Now, some people may say couch, some people may say sofa, some people may even say divan. That could be cultural, that could be geographical, that could be urban, suburban, rural, but it means something. So when we say that particular vocabulary word, we want to also help them understand the history behind that, right? Or why we say it the way we say it. Again, that's building that background knowledge, right? So I just want you to understand. So we're walking through how to spot these gaps, and then what you as a parent, their first and most important teacher, can do to support them on their literacy journey. But they need all of these things, right? Noticing confusion and fixing it while they're reading as well. That's why we have to be listening to them. We can't be doing all the reading all the time. We have to get to know them as readers. What are we observing and noticing as they read, right? So these are the things that makes comprehension work. These are the things we want to assess. We want to support as they move them toward mastery with these particular skill sets. So I hope that makes sense. We're going to keep on moving. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free, drop them in the chat. I will answer them, I promise you. If you want to push back on some of my thinking, something I'm sharing, something's confusing, you don't get it, you don't understand it, I'm open for that too. I got very, very broad shoulders, thick skin, and I can take it. All right, let's keep it moving, you guys. So strategy number one, very basic strategy in terms of assessment. What is it that we want to assess first? Now, you don't have to necessarily do these in order, but what I am suggesting is that you can start with some things that are going to give them success, and they are kind of scaffolded, meaning they build on one another. We've talked about that before, like one step at a time, right? So when we think about assessing comprehension at its rudimentary level, we want to talk about retelling and summarizing. They are different things, but they kind of live in the same vicinity of one another. So when we talk about retelling, what we want them to do is to retell a story or a passage aloud, verbally, in their own words. Now, when you ask them to retell, you're looking for all the details. And it may take a long time to get through it. That's okay. Be patient. Have them retell their favorite story, their favorite fairy tale, their favorite movie. Can they do that? Have they mastered that skill? Yes? Great. Now we want to see if they can summarize it. Now, again, they're only with the summarizing, they're doing it orally, aloud, but they're not giving every single detail. They're pulling out those most important points from the story using as few words as possible. Can they summarize it? It's real quick, shouldn't take a long time. And we have to explain that. Oh, if I tell you to retell something, if I'm asking you to retell your story, I want to know everything. Tell me, like, I could close my eyes, be as vivid as possible. I want to see this story in my mind's eye. But if you're asking them to summarize, you say, give me a quick run through. If you were telling your brother or sister just to get them hyped and excited about going to that movie or reading that book, what would you tell them? That's how I frame it, so that they understand the difference between retelling, aloud, giving all the details, and summarizing. Short synopsis, main ideas, is going to pump me up to go see that movie or read that book. And what are you listening for as they retell? What are you making note of? main idea? Are they telling it in sequence, in order? What happened first, second, third, etc.? What was the problem? What was the solution? That type of thing. Important details if we're focused on retelling. Not so many details if we're talking about summarizing. And then you can guide them. You can support them as well by asking, well, what happened first? If they're not familiar with retelling or summarizing yet, they don't understand what you're actually asking them, put it in terms that they understand and then lead them, right? If we're on a stand giving testimony in court, we can't lead them, but we can lead them with this, all right? So you want to say, what happened first? What happened second? Oh, what was the problem? Where were they? Why did that happen, right? Once you prod them a little bit, they should be able to take it and run on from there. If you have to prod them through the entire process, then you know this particular skill of retelling and or summarizing may need some additional practice and work. And we're going to set them up for success by giving them some strategies and things to do to then master these particular skills. All right. So that's strategy number one. Then you want to look at assessing them through questioning. They've read a text, they've read a story, they've read a nonfiction section of a text, right? And so now we want to ask questions. Well, you know, the literal questions, remember that's the bottom of that pyramid. So they can regurgitate this directly from the text if they paid attention. What happened? Who was involved? When did it occur? Like the War of 1812. When did it happen? Oh, okay. Don't tell me 1920 if I'm talking about the War of 1812. So those very literal questions, fact-based, who, what, when, where, right? Then you want to get into the questions that are going to force them to make some inferences, right? Why do you think that happened? What might happen next? And that may be checkpoints as they are reading that chapter book, right? Because they've gotten a lot of information up until that point. And then you say, well, what can you speculate? What do you think might happen next? Does it make sense what they answer? Write that down. Jot it down in your notes on the post-it notes. You don't want to take a ton of time out to address it right then, but you're observing, you're listening, you're taking notes. And then you want to get to those evaluative questions, right? Well, what would you do differently? Do you agree with that character? Why or why not? How would you have done it? So whatever they give you here, what the idea is that they are thinking through a text. They are accessing their background knowledge. They are asking themselves, would that make sense given the circumstances or from their lived experiences? Can they connect it to something they've seen in a documentary that's going on the news that they've heard about that are actually happening in their classroom, at their school, at their family member's house, right? So you want can they kind of go through all of these different types of questions? Does their answers make sense? Are they able to pull evidence from the text? This is something that you want to assess after the retelling and or the summarizing, okay? So I hope you all are following. I hope that makes sense. Let's keep it moving and grooving. So another assessment strategy that we want to do is think alouds, right? Think alouds. And this is really extremely important as well. Here's something I love to do. I love as a child is reading, and we want to be listening to them reading. So they're not silently reading. We're listening to them read, right? But we also want them to think aloud. Have them say, this reminds me of, or I bet this is gonna get ready to happen. You get them in the habit of doing that verbally and out loud before they start doing it mentally in their minds, right? The sophisticated, mature, practiced reader, right? Like some of us are. We can do this in our mind as we read, but we need to teach the skill and allow the children, our young people, as they master their particular literacy skills to do it out loud. That gets them in the habit of doing it. And we know once they form that habit, it's there, they'll be doing it internally eventually. But for right now, as they are getting started and working toward mastery, as early literacy learners, adolescent literacy learners, we need to hear that thinking. We want to hear it out loud. How are they processing their thoughts, right? It shows you how they're processing in real time, and it gets them in the habit again of monitoring their own understanding. Okay. So I want you all to understand that this strategy is really, really important, right? You want them to share their thinking while they're reading. You're prompting them. And then you're noting the evidence of engagement. You're writing it down, jotting the note down. Where did they struggle? What did they do really well? How can we celebrate those wins? Make note of the challenges or barriers that we need to work on. Okay. All right. So, next strategy. We're on number 4 already. Next strategy, using graphic organizers. Now, remember, these are adolescent literacy learners. My early literacy learners, very rarely will I give them pencil and paper. No, most of the time it's body kinesthetic, hands-on activities that they can do, games and activities. But with our adolescent literacy learners, 4th grade and above, not all the time, but at some points, we're going to give them one or more of these graphic organizers. Venn diagrams, story maps. So let me stop. Venn diagrams. It gives them an opportunity to compare and contrast what is similar, what is different about settings, about characters, right? About books, about concepts, right? So can they use these visual tools to help them organize the information that they have engaged with or learned about in a text? Story maps, generally speaking, going to be used for pieces of fiction. Can they chart out, map out what has happened in that particular piece of fiction, that particular piece of text? Who are the characters? Where are the settings? What was the problem solution? How did we escalate to that climax? And then how do we come down to reach that conclusion? Can they do this activity to show us in writing that they've understood the text? Cause and effect, right? That is another graphic organizer that we can utilize, right? What caused a particular effect within a text or concept? Science, social studies, perfect for this type of things, as well as pieces of fiction. And last but certainly not least, can they put a story or text that they've engaged with in sequence order? What happened first, next, then, at the end, etc. So these are tools. They can write, they can cut and paste. There are many different ways. You can actually do these in digital format as well. Drag and drop as well. There are tons of resources out there. If you were to put in your search bar, your magical search bar, Venn diagrams, story maps, cause and effect maps, things of that nature, graphic organizers. But this is a great strategy to use to assess, again, their understanding of a text. And then get really narrow when we start talking about characters very specifically, right? Or how are they breaking up and thinking through a text with the story maps, right? That cause and effect. Do they really pick up on the nuances? Are they able to make inferences from the text to determine cause and effect, etc.? So these are just some additional assessment tools we can use to help us understand where they are in their comprehension. Okay. All right. So 5, cloze activities. You can make these. You can find them online. You can purchase them. There are tons of them everywhere. Some are free, some are not, right? But you can use books, articles, etc. that your child is reading, and then you create fill in the blank passages, right? So you may have introduced this text to them, and then you actually can type it up, or if it's in a book, you can pull it out. And then we want to cover it. I don't care if you cover it with Post-it notes. I don't care if you white out words, use a black marker, whatever. What would go in this blank? Then we're really assessing, can they use context clues to see what's happening, right? So you create the fill in the blank passage, you have them complete the blanks, and then you discuss their choices, right? So this is a really good warm-up activity, introducing how to do it. I love what Mad Libs, right? So I love it. And I usually introduce the concept of fill in the blank using those Mad Libs because they're fun, they're engaging. Now, it does require a little bit of pre-work, like do they know what parts of speech are and things like that? Do they know what a noun is, a verb, color words, things like that? But you can get them for all age groups. But that's a really good tool, a fun and engaging way to introduce fill in the blank or what we call close activities. And then when you get ready to assess their comprehension, they've already been introduced. They've done it in a fun and engaging way. It's not intimidating, overwhelming, or frustrating for them. So this is a more advanced assessment strategy for comprehension, but nevertheless, it is a very valuable one. Okay. All right. Strategy number 6, you do want to get them eventually writing, especially our older kids. Remember, we said adolescent literacy learners, 4th grade and above. So our 8th through 12th graders, they should be writing. Can they write a summary? Can they recap the main points to show their overall understanding, right? We want to go a little deeper with them. We want them to write short but powerful responses. It could be a summary, it could be a connection to their life, or even a question they still have. I still wonder about this. I think this. I'm curiosity is great, and I am one to always go, I still have a wondering. And it's okay for them not to have a pretty little bow at the end of a text, a passage, etc. They still may be curious about something that the text didn't answer. That's how we know they're reading much more deeper than they perhaps were prior to you working on comprehension strategies with them. Okay. All right. So those are the strategies, 6 strategies. I'm going to review them real quick, and I'll review them again on the end. So one of the things we want to have them do is orally retell and summarize, right? Understanding that retelling requires us to give all the details, all the information. It takes a little time to retell it. But summarizing, however, does not require all of the detail. What we wanted, those main ideas, those main points. I always couch it in terms of what's going to give somebody hype to read this book or watch this movie or listen to this story, etc. Right? So that's strategy number 1, right? Retelling and summarizing. Then we get into questioning, right? Those literal questions, those questions that require some inferences, and those evaluative questions. How can they evaluate what has happened in the text, in the story, etc. Strategy 3, we want to hear them thinking through the text. We want to hear them thinking through what would happen next. Why did that happen? Right? So we want them doing this aloud and getting in the habit of practicing this, and eventually they will do that internally. We won't hear it out loud. Then we want to use graphic organizers, right? We can have cause and effects, Venn diagrams, story maps, sequencing, activities, etc. Then those close activities where we fill in the blank. Remember, I said introduce it in a fun and engaging way using Mad Libs. Then eventually you can create them based on the text that they are reading. Okay. Last but certainly not least is those written responses. We want our older adolescent literacy learners to be writing. Remember that reading and writing go hand in hand. They're interconnected. The more I read, the better I write. The more I write, I should be seeing the application and implementation of the skills that we have practiced. They should be able to demonstrate an understanding of certain things. The application of spelling patterns, right? They should be spelling better the more they read, the more they write. They should be building their writing stamina as well. All right. And the only way they do this is we're allowing them to write more. Okay. So what are you observing as a parent, as an early career educator, as a tutor, as a literacy coach, as a reading interventionist? What is it that you are observing in terms of their behavior and mastery of skill? If they are avoiding or distracting, the text may be too difficult for them. They are reaching their frustration level. They don't want to engage with it. All of our assessments should be done using grade level text. But if you're using a grade level text and they're avoiding, they're checking out, they're getting distracted, they need to go to the bathroom, I want to drink water, or they're getting, upset, this may be too difficult for them to tackle. Take it down a notch, and that's okay. Are they getting frustrated with certain types of questions or activities? then that particular comprehension skill may not have reached the level of mastery that we want for them yet. So they need more practice. You make note of that. And then we're going to intentionally, consistently practice that particular skill to mastery. You all have heard me talk about mastery many, many times before. And what do I say about mastery? Remember, it's the independent demonstration of a skill up to with 90% accuracy or more. That child, that student should be able to independently demonstrate their understanding of a particular skill with 90% accuracy or more. That's mastery. High expectations, right? Academic rigor needs to be there. If we say 50% is cool, we're settling for mediocre. I will tell you they will not get to meaning making and comprehension. They won't. All right, confused about vocabulary. We know there is. If they're saying, well, what does that mean? Well, I don't know that word. How do you pronounce that word? They can't even begin to get to comprehension because they need to do more work around vocabulary. We know that if they can't master the vocabulary, they can't get to meaning making. Last but certainly not least, and this is not an exhaustive list, if they struggle with text organization. What? Beginning, middle, end. Right? Problem, solution, cause, effect. If they're struggling in that way in terms of the way in which the text is organized, then we really have to work on be intentional and consistent and provide lots of practice around sentence structure, syntax, and the way in which different genres of text is presented to us. So those are possible things that could be happening with this child if this is what we notice in terms of their behavior or their lack of mastery of particular skill sets. I hope that makes sense for y'all. All right? Okay. So let's keep it moving and grooving. So you say, okay, Katina, I know what comprehension is. I know we're looking for 90% accuracy or mastery of these particular skills. I have 6 or 7 different strategies I can use to assess their comprehension. I won't do them all at the same time, but I have these different strategies that I can move around and utilize to assess their mastery. I know that if they show up with particular behaviors, there may be a problem, and here are some potential problems. What do I do with all this information? I'm glad you asked, right? First things first, celebrate the wins. Celebrate that they have mastered some skills, because very rarely are we going to find a child that has such a significant gap or a group of challenges that they haven't mastered anything. The number one way you can begin to build their confidence as literacy learners is celebrating their strengths, pointing those things out first, right? I always tell parents of my littles, I say, think about when they learn to use the pot and the big party and the parade we had for that. That's kind of how we want to celebrate their literacy wins, right? Their strengths. Man, you were great at that. You nailed that. Yes, give me some. Oh, you want your favorite meal? Okay, right? So we want to celebrate that. That is the first thing. First things first, right? Then you want to make a plan. You notice that they have some gaps in their knowledge base. They're not quite there with their comprehension. You notice what they need to work on. You don't try to attack everything at once. That will overwhelm you and them. So you want to pick out 2 to 3 areas that you know you're going to focus on, and then you want to get some activities that go particularly to those, specifically to developing those particular skills. Okay, so that's how you plan your next steps. Now remember, I always say that if we're working with our children at home, and we should be, that's the whole point of this, right? Parents first and most important teachers of their children. Okay, we have to be doing this 3 to 5 days a week, 15 minutes minimum, 45 minutes maximum. We don't want it to be overkill for them and or us, but we do need to be consistent and intentional. So as you plan these next steps, you say, okay, I know they need to work on retelling. We're going to think about their top 3 to 5 movies their top 3 to 5 books, their favorite stories, whatever it may be. And we're going to focus on retelling those. It could even be retelling what happened in their day at school that day. Right? So retelling about a basketball game or a football game that they watched as if they were a commentator. Gets them in a habit and practicing that skill. Okay? So I want you to be as creative as you can be in planning those. But remember, the top 2 or 3 things, you don't try to tackle everything at once, but you do want to be consistent and intentional. 15 minutes minimum, 45 minutes maximum, 3 to 5 days a week. That does not overwhelm you and or them. You want to address those growth areas. You want to tell them, we celebrated your wins. I have this plan. I noticed when I was asking you to retell or to summarize or to use the Venn diagrams or whatever it may be, you weren't quite at mastery yet. So I know you need some more practice. And so we're going to work on figuring this out more, right? We're going to work on this particular skill a bit more, because the more you practice, the better you get. That's what we tell them. We're upfront, we're honest. Remember, these are adolescent literacy learners. They are not babies. They are quite clear what they struggle with and what they don't. We just need to be open and honest and be a support. So we're working together to move them forward. And then you also want to talk to their teachers. Hey, at home, I assessed them in comprehension. These are some of the strategies I used, and I noticed they were really kind of weak or struggling or had some gaps in this particular area. Have you noticed this too? How did you assess it? How are you addressing it and teaching it and giving them an opportunity to practice? This is what we're doing at home. Can you support me and make sure that they're also able to practice at school? Why? Because now they're getting it at home, they're getting it at school. Before you know it, that gap has shrunk, it's been eliminated, it is closed, gone away. This child has mastered this particular skill because we are working as a team to support them. And that's what should be happening, right? So these are the things you do once you get the results. Once you've used these different strategies to look at comprehension, this is what you do with that information. But we cannot leave that school, that educational institution, out of it. Okay? I want you all to be clear. This is about teamwork, and this is how we make our students move forward, our children move forward, or support them in doing that, I should say. So then you say, okay, so I know what their strengths are. We'll practice those, periodically, sporadically, just to make sure they stay strengths. But we also know their areas of improvement. So what do? Well, we're going to practice comprehension every day. Remember, I said we're going to be intentional. We're going to be consistent. You can talk about articles, videos, movies, documentaries, text they're reading at dinner, in the car, while you're doing laundry or dishes, while they're cleaning their room. We can be having these conversations with them, because sometimes it's just conversation. Don't always feel like it has to be formal, sit down at a table or a desk to do something. No. If vocabulary is a struggle, word of the day. I'm good. I love word of the day, right? Are they having trouble understanding the text that they're engaging with? Then we need to not only focus on academic vocabulary, but content-specific vocabulary as well. We can pre-teach that, meaning, hey, I know you're studying, I don't know, biology. I don't know. But whatever that concept of that skill is, then you pull out the vocabulary. You could pre-teach that. Hey, let's make us some cards, some index cards. Let's draw some pictures, whatever it is that we need to do to introduce that, to retain it, build the neural pathways so that they then, when they actually get into the text, they understand what those words mean. Do it. Make a bingo game, a crossword game, a word search. Have them make their own dictionaries, right? If they having trouble with retelling and summarizing, podcasts, books on tape. I say books on tape. Lord, I'm dating myself. Audiobooks are great ways to actually listen a little bit, summarize, listen a little bit, retell, podcasts, things like that, because they're already into it. Vlogs, that we call them, video logs, vlogs. Those are other opportunities. Infusing technology. Our kids have technology, access to technology. They're going to use technology. We don't need to fight it. We need to figure out ways to creatively integrate it for their good. Okay. So these are just some ways that we can do everyday comprehension practice. Intentionality, consistency, 3 to 5 days a week, 15 minutes to 45 minutes, plus what they're getting at school, baby. We will see them grow by leaps and bounds. I promise you, you will. So, but I also want you to understand that it's really about finding the right balance, okay? This does not have to, what we do at home does not have to feel or replicate what is happening at school. We know that structure. We know that it can be laborious. It can be frustrating. It can be boring. We don't have to replicate that at home because we have free reign of what we can do at home, right? We're not working with the rules and regulations that some educators work under. No, not at all. So you're not, when you think about assessing them at home, when you think about teaching them and supporting them in a real way to practice particular skills, remember, we're not talking about testing. I always say that. I've said that since episode 1 of Teaching Tuesdays. When we think about assessment, what we are saying to them is, hey, I need to get some information to help you. And the only way I can do this is if we do these couple of little activities, let me observe, let me listen, let me take some notes, and then I really know how to help you best. That's what we should be thinking about. We are not testing, we're checking in. Okay, that's what we're doing. So you want to aim to do comprehension checks kind of as you go. What do I mean? Like this says every 2 to 4 weeks. I put that there as a guide. It is not hard and fast. You all know me well enough now to know that nothing is ever hard and fast, right? It's a guide. Kind of gives you some guideposts. What I say is if they read a chapter, do an assessment. If they finish a particular book, do an assessment. If you all are doing watching a movie, do an assessment. Like how can, and use different strategies to assess their understanding. So it doesn't have to be the same way each time. But it creates low pressure for you, low pressure for them. But you also get to see the meaningful progress, the growth that they are having. And because we know that time is precious, we often don't have enough of it. We have a million things going on. It fits your busy schedule. It does. So that's why I put these natural check-in opportunities after finishing books or chapters, when discussing news articles, while reviewing schoolwork, etc. So you're looking for accurate summaries, thoughtful questions, understanding of vocabulary, which we know all moves us to meaning making, comprehension, right? It is not formal. Don't overwhelm yourself or overwhelm them. It helps no one. You guys got it? You with me? All right. So that's it, y'all. We here. I don't know how much time. Let me see where we at on time. We've done great on time. I usually say an hour. We're at 52 minutes today. Let's start wrapping this right on up, right? So we've learned very simple, powerful strategies to assess comprehension at home, right? 6 different strategies, tools, and activities we can use to assess their ability to make meaning from a text that they're engaging with. I want you all to drop in the comments, in the group, on our YouTube channel. What was your big takeaway? What was your aha moment? What are you walking away with knowing, having learned that you didn't know before you got here tonight, right? Join in conversation. And here's my challenge for you, my call to action. Which strategy will you use with your child, with your students this week? I'll wait. Don't everybody tell me at once, right? I want you to tell me what strategy you're going to use, how it goes. How did you feel about it? How did your child or students respond to it? Okay? I want you to do the work. You have to do the work. That's how you get over the hump. If you feel like, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure, just try it. Just do it. I guarantee you will surprise yourself and you'll learn a lot about your child or your students as learners as well. So that's my weekly challenge. That's my call to action for you all. If you don't know, now you know. Our short vowel decodable readers are available for purchase. You can scan the QR code or go to www.dkcbooks.com and make a purchase today. Remember that Dreams KC is a 501c3 nonprofit, so all of your purchases support our work as we support our parents in assisting their children in becoming confident and competent readers. So please, please, please support us. Again, that's www.dkcbooks.com. You notice they are culturally relevant. They represent and feature characters that look like our children. They have names that the children will be familiar with. Remember, drawing connections. They are in settings and places in which our children can identify with. Each book focuses on a particular short vowel sound. Remember, these are decodable books. So these are the books, the text that your children can use so you can observe them as readers. Can they make meaning from the text? Can they summarize or retell, etc., right? You shouldn't be doing all the reading all the time. You want to listen to them read. You want to give them opportunities to read. So I encourage you all to go check them out. And let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. If you want to purchase in bulk, reach out to me for your classrooms, for your schools, your school districts. We have deals available for you. All right, let's see. And that's it. That's what I got. As always, you all know that I end everything with, say it with me. Say it with me. Can you say it with me? Let's get lit, y'all. I'll see you next week. Same place, same time, same station, all that, for another episode of Teaching Tuesday. I hope that this has been beneficial to you. I hope that you use these strategies with your students, with your children, to move them along into becoming confident and competent readers. Until next time, bye-bye, y'all. Let's get lit.
Welcome in, grab a seat, let's begin. It's Teaching Tuesday where the magic's within. Unlock the words, let the stories unfold. In a world of letters, watch the wonders take hold. Come on in, let's learn and grow. Build the future word by word, row by row. Together we'll read, together we'll rise. On Teaching Tuesdays, we'll open our eyes. Every sound, every line brings us closer to turning our learners into super posers. Phonics and fun, on a journey we'll lead. With every Tuesday, we plant another seed. Come on in, let's learn and grow. Build the future word by word, row by row. Together we'll read, together we'll rise. On Teaching Tuesdays, we'll open our eyes. Step by step, we'll find our way. Through every challenge, come what may. In our group, you're never alone. Together we'll turn this skill into a stone. Come on in.